So, Stu, what if Rick Astley joined Rush?
An interesting fact is he was an original member. Even before John Rutsey, their original drummer, Rick Astley, auditioned to play drums.
For Rush?
Yeah, for Rush.
I feel like you're messing with me.
They are childhood best friends. You really didn't know this.
And you really know.
I'm really making this up, man.
You said it so convincingly. Like, honestly, usually I'm really good at picking up on sarcasm like that, and you absolutely had me going on.
You just made my morning.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's good.
And that is why
I would have thought that Irish coffee would have made your morning.
That is why I am never going to give you up.
Oh,
no.
Never. Right.
Yeah, so let's talk about Stu's coffee for a minute. It's quote unquote, normal coffee.
I mean, there's no booze in it, if that's what you're asking.
Right.
But
it's roasted with peat moss.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, no, that's Scotland.
Yeah. So how you guys been?
Good. Busy and busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, doing great, man.
Stu's had some meetings and such for work.
Right, that sounds so official, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's, of course, Moon Hot Media, where we always hang out at the studio. Yep. He's here if you need his work.
I did even get
your
Stu out into the wild this week.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah, that's
right. For the Radkey show?
Last week, yeah.
Yeah. Saw Radkey. Mm-hmm. It's a really cool show. Some other good local bands, Smoke Free Home.
Yep, out of Oshkosh, Wisconsin.
And
Lunar Moth. I believe they're also out of Oshkosh.
I think they are too. Yeah. But that was my first time seeing Smoke Free Home, and
same here.
They were pretty awesome, man. I loved their intensity.
Yeah, they were. Like I was telling Stu, that was one of the most punk rock shows, like just all around, that I've seen. In, a lot of years. A lot of years. Usually
complete with
like a good
drunken stumbling into the amps and stuff.
Yeah. There's some good drunken shenanigans on stage. Rocking.
Well, my beer got spilled. Like there was like that 10-person pit, and they flailed into me because I was right on the edge, and my beer went all over this woman next to me. And
there was kind of two guys in the pit that were like. It's like, yeah, get it, dance, have fun, but like you don't need. It's not a metal show. Like we don't need to just push people to push people.
Yeah, I didn't. I thought it was a pretty friendly pit. I think.
Yeah.
So I want to circle.
You stand close. That's what happens.
I want to circle back and talk about Radkey still, but wasn't that terribly long ago? I had a patient who was my age, who was there because he essentially got beat up in a pit. And he was going again, and it was just to look at. It was for a metal show, and dude was just all freaking jacked up about it, and like he had a bunch of pains all over his body. And I was trying to tell him, I think he was like 2 years younger than me. I'm like, hey, dude, you might want to take it easy at this show.
James, I joined a softball league recently this summer, and we're getting ready for Game 3, and essentially, because I'm so out of shape. I spend the entire week leading up to the game recuperating just in time to get re-injured at the next game.
Oh, good times.
I understand that.
I played kickball a few years ago with some other people about my age that worked at an ER, and I didn't realize how out of shape I was as well. And I've put on weight since then. I can't even imagine what it would be like if I tried to do that now. I would die.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, Radkey. I want to go back to Radkey. I saw them first at Mile of Music and caught one of their short hour-ish shows. So that's cool that you guys got to see the whole show. But I did a bunch of research on them, and it's just absolutely crazy. These guys have like toured with like the Foo Fighters, like opening for them, but they fully fund their albums themselves. Like they're like a self-funded label.
That's awesome. Yeah, I saw that actually. That CD we have was recorded at the Blasting Room, which is Bill Stevenson from Descendants, All Black Flag. That's his, and I think maybe Stephen Egerton.
Oh yeah,
I think maybe it's the two of them who's also from Descendants. That's their studio. So I thought that was pretty cool. I actually have something about Radkey, and I didn't even put this on the board. But all right, so they teased during their set that they are gonna be, and I assume they mean their music in an upcoming movie, and they were very tight-lipped about. What that was. They didn't give anything away. We talked to them a little bit after the show.
Tried to pry some of it out, and they were like, nope, can't say nothing.
And later I kind of developed a theory, although I could be way off base here. But the movies we talked about with them afterwards, because they'd just seen, we were talking to Dee, the singer, was this new Super Mario Brothers movie and Guardians of the Galaxy 3. So that's kind of like what they're stoked on. And then I remembered that their encore number that they played, the final one, was Go Teen Titans. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I wonder if there's a new Teen Titans movie, and if that was like a little clue. Or do they always play that number? I don't know.
I believe they played that when they
did
played,
they?
because they played that, was it Halloween they played at McFleshman's?
Did
was
they
around
play that
then.
when all right, so my theory might be completely bogus.
They
then.
are huge video game and like anime guys. Like they actually, if you go to their, I believe it's a Patreon if I remember correctly, and you have tiers of donation, like they will. One of the things is like you can get to play video games with them online.
Oh,
Oh, really?
Yeah, in addition to like having posters made of your cat with their name on it, and like your cat on their album covers and stuff like that. These guys have a lot of interest in that vein, so that might have just been a song. that
Okay,
they were
all
playing.
right. Well,
yeah.
never mind.
Like I said, I mean that was over a year ago that they played that
Bogus
show.
cat.
So
all right.
yeah, I doubt that's it. But every time they play that because I've heard them play that song 3 times now, and I always think like, man, they need to be one of those like cartoon adaptation bands on Scooby-Doo. You know how they always have like those cool punk rock
Groovy
bands?
Ghoulies.
Yeah, like that shit like that. I'm like, wow, they need to do this. Like, so if anybody out there has any connections with the people that produce Scooby-Doo,
Get
I would
Radke
imagine
on
it's
there.
at least it's still getting produced anymore.
I think
haven't
There's
seen it,
still
but-
new Scooby. Yeah.
DVD
It's gone through a number of
movies.
iterations.
Reach out to Radke because they would love it and they would be perfect for it because they're goofy, they're stupid high energy, and they're awesome musicians.
Yeah, and if you guys don't know them, I would say that their vibe when they come out and play is like a high energy Ramones. It's fast and just like, and then they do all kinds of elaborate like rock movements and things like that. But then the singer sounds like Glenn Danzig when he sings.
He does. He's got a nice like baritone voice.
Yeah.
And he's not a big dude at all.
No.
You know, like, I mean, not that Danzig's tall in stature,
Yeah, he
but
sure
he's a
isn't.
big son of a
Yeah,
gun.
yeah.
But yeah, this guy is not tall nor big in stature. Yeah,
But his heart is huge.
He's a huge heart.
I don't know.
All right, guys, we should probably just start the old show here.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. What's up, everybody? You are, of course, listening to the Just One More Record podcast. I am, of course, James Dorn. With me, I got,
Steve Main.
and of course, the man behind the keyboard making us sound oh so silky smooth.
Stu McLean.
Do you like how I called your soundboard a keyboard? It makes it feel like
You know
you're-
what? I actually do have a keyboard over here.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
let's
I did not
just-
know that.
You'll have to add in a little.
We got one of each, buddy.
a little soundbite on your little ditty.
Yeah,
I figured
right.
with all these instruments around, you probably had a keyboard somewhere.
Dude, we got. Well,
But do you have a cowbell?
yeah. I don't actually.
We're
I
gonna
burned
have
it
to-
to Blue Oyster Cult last time they were
What kind
touring.
of studio doesn't have a cowbell?
I don't know, man.
Do you have a tambourine?
Oh, I do have a tambourine.
Do you have that weird box where like they make hand gestures? I can't remember what it's
Oh,
called.
like a theremin?
Yes, a theremin.
I don't, but I can get my hands on one.
Yeah, we have
quickly.
access to it.
Yeah,
If you guys don't know what a
I know a
theremin
guy.
is, you should look that up.
yeah.
So-
It's actually a really great documentary about theremin that came out in the late '90s, I think.
I was watching a show called The Big Door Prize on Apple TV, and one of the guys gets one of those for his birthday. It's not super relevant to the story of the show, but definitely comes up a few times. I was like, oh, yeah, I forgot about those things. Those things are interesting.
They're rad. Yeah.
That's about the only thing I could probably ever play.
I mean, they're hard to play actually because I mean, you see in the documentary when it was first created, like it was treated as a serious instrument, and like there were people like playing at Carnegie Hall, like who were actually
wow.
playing classical melodies on it. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose it's interesting. Like,
There was a version of, sorry, like put me on
That's okay.
off on a tangent, but I just read about this thing the other day. There was a version of that made. It's not called I can't remember what it's called, but someone designed it to be responsive to dance movements, so like full body. And so
Crazy.
to play it, you're doing basically full body dance movements.
Interesting.
Yeah.
well, I think we need to bring it back and make it popular again.
Yeah. 3-piece. Each one of us has one.
Well, there's got to be a drum version, right? Because that's what Steve.
Pretty
Yeah,
dance.
it doesn't exist yet, but get on that, buddy.
We're gonna make that. So guys, what are you listening to? Who wants to start?
Take it away, Steve.
Oh man, I'm trying to think what I've been listening to. I've just been kind of, I don't know. I've been so busy with work and whatnot after coming back from down the mountain. I haven't really been listening to a whole lot.
But you bought something though.
Yeah, I did find a couple of cool vinyls. I just got an old record store release from I'm trying to think of the year 2000. Shoot, now I can't even remember what year it was from. It's a few years back. The Horrible Crows is a 7-inch that they released for Record Store Day. Some fellow member of one of the Brian Fallon Gaslight Anthem fan pages that I follow on Facebook. He had posted. He's like, "Oh, check out this cool 7-inch I got." I was like, "Oh man, that's really awesome!" Like I said, if you ever want to decide you want to part with it, think of me, ha ha ha, like small chance. And he had sent me a private message saying, "Hey, I happen to have an extra one if you want. Like I can ship it to you for like, I don't know, $11." I'm like, "Sure, dude." So for $11, I got a pretty cool old record store 7-inch.
Nice.
Brand new.
Nice.
Yeah.
I happened to get something that I had really been wanting for a while and was absolutely super digging it. It's the Yeah Yeah Yeahs Fever to Tell.
Okay, yeah.
That's a good album. That's kind of, how would you have you listened to that album, Stu?
I have. It's been it one time resided in my CD collection, and I'm not sure what happened to it. But so I have not listened to it in years. But
yeah, this is one of those albums. I would almost compare it to like, I don't know, like garage grunge music to a point. Like,
yeah.
I mean, it's a little sloppy and a little messy.
Yeah, it's raw.
It's very raw. Their most notable song off that is a song called Maps. And the reason I knew that was because it was featured on the game Rock Band 2 that I played back in the day.
Okay.
And that was just such a good song. But the rest of the album is so much more like heavier and raw energy than their most popular song off of it. But that was one that was like heavily flipped for years, and I was lucky enough to get one for retail.
Nice.
Blues country singer Marcus King. I had picked up one of his other albums not that long ago. I was able to get his first album, which is El Dorado. I have to say that his Dan Auerbach follow-up was much, much better, but this is still really quite good. Then I got Florence and the Machine, Lungs.
Oh, that's a great album. I love that album.
Yeah. I recently found that when I was doing one of my dives into music, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. And then I found it, and it was a good price. I was like, snatch that up. And then I haven't listened to these two yet, but I was able to pick up Radio Moscow's Brain Cycles and Radio Moscow's self-titled debut.
I don't know Radio Moscow.
Oh, if you Steve didn't either when I was talking to him about it. If you like, I don't know how to put this, like energetic, like blues rock music, I would kind of liken it slightly to the John Spencer Blues Explosion. Just really blistering like blues riffs and stuff. This is a good band for you to check out.
All right.
So
awesome.
So that's what I've been down with.
I've been
jamming out to the new Damned album.
Is that the one you wanted to get while we were recording the last episode?
Yeah, that was it. Their new album Darkadelic came out, and it's actually charting like top 10 over in the UK.
Nice.
But us uncivilized Americans.
Yeah, I don't even know what the charts are here. I just like I see them in my news feed on Facebook, so they're like.
Nice.
Anyway, but yeah, so it's a good album. It's real. It's interesting. That it sounds very much like it has a 60s vibe to it. But they, it's sort of like a punk gothic, but with a 60s vibe to it.
Nice.
Yeah. So anyway, it's good. It's good to hear them playing. It's a very solid release. There's maybe one song I could do without, but
it's always good when you get that band that's in a lot of ways like a legacy band to you, and they can still put out decent stuff.
Yeah.
Not everybody can do that. Some people just stick around way too long.
They do. It's been interesting though seeing like some of these older bands. Like I think the Descendants put out one of their best albums years ago when they did Hypercapnium Spasm.
Yeah, that is an amazing album.
I think Judas Priest with Firepower is like that's one of their top 5 albums for me.
Really,
Like,
I don't think I've ever listened to any newer Judas Priest.
Yeah, and I haven't.
I think
really
I have like
looked at
British
people-
Steel, and that's it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh man, you're missing out. Sin After Sin, Stained Class, Painkiller, and that one Firepower, which like I mean a late career offering like that, but I think
They're
it's
still
great.
touring too.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm happy that they got Rob back in the band.
Oh yeah. Although KK Downing's out, he was their one of their 2 guitarists, but
Yeah, I did see that, and then when
Guitarists are a dime a dozen.
and then when Ozzy decided to stop touring, that left them in a bind, and they were frantically trying to find tour dates. Last I heard, because they wanted to keep touring.
oh Priest,
Yeah, they were supposed to open in support of Ozzy.
That's right.
Yeah. So
well, keep us posted on that.
no, this was a couple months ago. I haven't definitely not looked into them.
Okay.
Since then. So Stu, I hear you got some loose ends from our previous episode.
Oh man, I do have some loose ends. So the number one biggest one, and this is all like errors, right, and omissions.
We try to be upfront when we make mistakes, and we try to own it because honestly, some days we're just not really prepared.
And brother, I made a lot of them last episode. So the biggest one is Martin Barr is not dead. The guitar player from Jethro Tull. I suggested he might be deceased. 100% incorrect. He is actually about to embark on a tour called A Brief History of Jethro Tull.
Is he not in the band?
He's not playing in Jethro Tull. And that's where I got confused. I remember reading about him being, I think in my head I was like, oh, that's the end of Jethro Tull, but apparently not. So he and Ian Anderson are both doing different things Tull related.
I wonder if there's a little feud there.
I would imagine so.
I would have to
but
assume.
I don't know what it is.
Yeah. But we don't want to create more loose ends.
Yeah, let's create more drama.
Let's just shut up before we dig a deeper hole.
It's all about the ratings.
Yeah. Thanks, Trump. All right. So we discussed that movie, The Dead Don't Die.
I do remember that. That was
okay.
in our Sturgill Simpson conversation.
And I said, guys, it was an all-star cast, and then all I could remember was Bill Murray and Selena Gomez.
And I got excited about Selena Gomez.
As you well should have. But check it out. The cast, and this is not everybody, but these are the big names. Bill Murray, Adam Driver, Tilda Swinton, Chloe Savini, Selena Gomez, Danny Glover, Steve Buscemi, Tom Waits, Austin Butler, who recently played Elvis in the Elvis movie, Rosie Perez, Sturgill Simpson as a zombie, Carol Kane, The RZA, and Iggy Pop.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
I think Zombie Sturgill will still be better than most of the mainstream country music.
So, and with all that, that movie only holds a 55% and 38% rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
Really?
Not that that's,
A travesty.
the be all end all, but it
how
is
do-
not among his most beloved movies.
How do most zombie movies really rate on Rotten Tomatoes?
Probably not well.
I mean, I think Zombieland and Night of the Living Dead probably rate really high.
Yeah.
28 Days Later? Come on, these are Are you kidding?
I'm not a big zombie guy.
Dude.
Sorry.
I played zombie games. I mean, I watched The Walking Dead, but
Yeah, like I can't even get into The Walking Dead, and I've had so many people say, "Oh, but it's not all about the zombies. It's such a good story." I'm like, the whole story is about zombies.
no, really, we're gonna get off subject here. Most truly good zombie shows, the story is not about the zombies. The zombies are more of a plot device. And what that teaches you is that humans are awful and you should never trust humans. It's about what they do to each other.
Interesting. I always felt so. Night of the Living Dead is one of my all-time favorite.
Night of the
movies.
Living Dead's definitely more of a plot device. In there, I feel it's a lot of that's about their relationships with each other.
Well, it is. It's revealing about the interactions and about survival. And to me, growing up, like it was a movie that used to get into my head, like as I was walking home from somewhere, and I'd be like, "All right, what would I do right now if the zombies started attacking?" Right. So it was always about like what's my survival strategy.
Did you ever watch The Walking Dead to the point where you saw Negan?
I can't say. I don't know.
Okay.
I saw like 1 or 2 seasons of
So
it.
he's a villain late in the series, and he was a pretty big villain in the comic book series. But when I got to that point and this live action version of him came on, I found myself watching going, this is what I would be. This guy right here.
interesting.
This
Yeah.
guy right here is me. Like at one point, like the main characters all come through and they raid like their bases and stuff like that, thinking it's just one base, and it turns out it's part of a bigger organization. He rounds them all up and he's talking about how they're going to work for him and stuff, and he's like, you shot my people, blah blah blah, we can't have that, we have rules and blah blah blah. And then he proceeds to smash 2 of their heads in with baseball bats. But then like the people that work
That
for
would
him,
be you, is what you're saying.
yeah, but then the people that work for him, he treats them really well, the loyal ones and stuff like that. He's got rules, like he'd never let like women be treated poorly and stuff. I'm like, and then he's wearing a cool leather jacket, a leather glove, and a red scarf around his neck. I'm
He's
like,
never gonna give you up.
he's never
gonna let you down.
He's never gonna let me down.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's me. And I'm like, I don't know what that says. A lot of times I watch shows and I identify with the villains.
It does not surprise me, James.
I'm like, this
I
guy's
don't know
not
that
that
I
bad.
enjoy what I'm learning about you today.
you get used to it, Stu. Don't worry.
I don't even want to talk about when I watch Dexter.
Right.
So,
All right.
we got some more. Is that it for missions?
I've got one more.
One more.
I'm
Okay.
telling you, I was full of shit.
Full of
last,
shit.
Yeah,
Full
last.
of shit, like
All right,
normal.
So when we were talking about the childhood records that shaped us,
Oh yes.
I mentioned Wacky Winners, and you made a comment. You're like, oh, it's like Kids Bop. And I said, no, these were the original singers. Well, it turns out that was not entirely correct, because I went and looked it up. And some, if not all, of the recordings were actually redone with different singers under the name the Puff and Toot Singers. Now, you tell me, is that a train reference or a drug reference?
To me, I think it goes down to the whole thing where it's like kids love poop and fart jokes.
Right?
I've always said that.
Puff and Toot.
Puff and toot.
Puff and Toot.
But it
So,
can also
anyway.
be drugs as
So
well.
the classic Puff and Toot Singers at least re-recorded some of those hits.
Shout out to the Puff and Toot singers.
Hell yeah. Let's see if we can get them playing at Riot Fest this year.
That would be amazing. Hi, we're the Puff and Toot singers. They're all dressed like hardcore punks, but then they play these little kid songs. That would be so good.
Have you guys seen that I know we were just talking about a little bit before here, the new Riot Fest lineup just came out.
Why don't you run us through it?
Yeah, who's
So some of the big names here are Queens of the Stone Age, the Mars Volta, Godspeed You, Black Emperor, Kim Gordon, The Breeders.
Kim Gordon.
Get down here to the list. So yeah, this year's headliners include The Cure, Foo Fighters, The Postal Service, and Death Cab for Cutie, Turnstile, Queens of the Stone Age, and the Mars Volta. Festival's going to be returning to Chicago from September 15th to the 17th. Some other pretty good bands here. Let me get down to the list here. Cult, Insane Clown Posse. I had no idea those guys are still doing their
No,
thing.
they are. You want to know what's funny? You know what, Cameo, you can talk to one of them, or not talk to them, but you can have a message from one of them. I really strongly dislike ICP from my time working in Oshkosh, because there are more juggalos per square mile in Oshkosh.
Does not surprise me.
Yeah, the Hatchet Man stickers on cars as far as you can see.
There's a dude on one of the camera forums that I lurk on who is like shooting a documentary about ICP, and he was talking about just the number of cameras he had that were destroyed by Faygo, like the orange Faygo, like soda being thrown on it while he's in the pit, and he was just like, yeah, he's like I have to treat all cameras as disposable going in. I think he actually stopped the documentary because it like the attrition rate of his gear was so high.
Honestly, like every time I see a can of Faygo, like I can't like not think about ICP, and like I won't drink Faygo.
Wow,
Like
All right.
it just deeply bothers me.
I love Faygo, but I never got into Insane
That is their
Clown
drink,
Posse.
right?
Yeah.
their-
I have no
yeah.
idea. I never
I
got
feel
into
about
ICPs.
I feel about Faygo, or I'm sorry, ICP, the way Steve feels about Queen.
Oh, really? Oh, it's that much hatred. That's
That's
awesome.
got to be the way I feel about Creed. So
Yeah, with
Oh, yeah.
arms wide open.
shut
So
up.
some other bands here. I'm just reading the entire list here. Mr. Bungle.
Oh,
The Gaslight
Whoa.
Anthem, AFI, The Used, The Dresden Dolls. Do you know the Dresden Dolls, Stu?
Not very well.
You would
I know
love
who
them.
they are.
There's
but
a lot of
yeah.
these bands that I don't know, so I'm just going
You
to say
need to
that.
check them out. The Breeders.
Yep.
Viagra Boys. The Interrupters. Flogging Molly. Frank Turner and the Sleeping Souls. Pennywise. Bayside. Ani DeFranco.
No kidding.
Yep.
Whoa.
Parliament. Funkadelic.
Hell yeah.
Featuring George Clinton.
Yeah.
I got to see like part of a show at a festival years and years ago. A must see.
Who, Parliament?
Funkadelic featuring
Funkadelic?
George Clinton.
I actually played a festival with them.
Oh, really? Awesome. Awesome.
We played the day before on a much smaller stage.
I was gonna say you were there with them. How high were you?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a funny story.
The
but-
Gorilla Biscuits.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I had no idea those guys were still around.
Maybe they didn't know either.
Could be.
Man,
Bowling-
that is quite a lineup.
Bowling for Soup.
Oh, I'd love to see them.
The Exploited? What? No way. Screaming Females.
Oh,
We just talked about.
oh yeah.
War Paint.
Okay.
Just Mustard. I believe they're a ska band. I remember.
I remember
If
Mustard
I remember correctly.
Plug.
Yeah, Mustard Plug. But I think Just Mustard is a ska band.
Okay.
I think. I could be wrong. Empire State Bastard.
So that is a hell of a lineup.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Like a lot of those bands are like sort of punk adjacent. With
Yeah,
Riot
Riot
Fest
Fest. Yeah, Riot Fest is punk rock driven. I'm
Yeah.
actually like a lot of years like the Misfits have played there a lot. I think that's where they came back. They may have had their first like full lineup original re-debut or whatever
Yeah,
you call
yeah.
it at Riot Fest.
Well,
I
that's what I was
consider
saying. It seemed like a lot of those bands. Like I was sort of surprised they're playing Riot. Like they're not really punk bands, but
Yeah, like Naked Ray Gun will a lot of times play at Riot Fest 'cause they're from Chicago. I'm actually kind of surprised because they just have a newer album out. I'm kind of surprised they're not playing it this year.
yeah, some of my favorite bands are playing.
Yeah.
that's
Wild.
exciting.
What were you
Yeah.
going to say,
I was
James?
gonna say I consider myself to be punk adjacent.
Right? Yeah.
Just because he knows you and me, Stu.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I never pretend to be a huge punk guy because I could not hang in that conversation.
Yeah.
And I am not a poser. So, all right, guys. So I guess we'll jump in the news, but certainly Riot Fest, if you have the opportunity to go, even if you're not 100% into punk music, there's some great people that are going to be there, like Gaslight Anthem and Parliament. And I'm like, you're going to have a good time either way. Mm-hmm. Just remember, if you're over the age of like 40, definitely stay out of the pit. We don't need you breaking a hip. So anyway, so you guys remember Ed Sheeran, that conversation we had? about
Yeah,
his trial?
he was just playing drums at
Yeah.
the show the other night. The guy, the drummer from Smoke Free Home, I saw him before the show, and I was like, "Oh, Ed Sheeran's here. That's cool."
This dude walking through
And
the
then all of a sudden,
crowd,
like,
and then
oh,
he
he's
gets
on
behind the
stage.
kit.
Well, guess what? He got found not liable of
Really?
copyright infringement.
So I guess
so
we have to
surprised.
listen to more music from Ed Sheeran. 'Cause wasn't he going to leave if he was found guilty?
Yeah, so he's going to still make music, so that's
Damn.
exciting. And kind of on a side note, he was talking about country music. He said he loves the whole country music culture and would love to transition in the country.
Oh boy.
Wow.
I was like, I don't know if the culture of country music is great
You
because it's
know.
kind of exclusive and a lot of gatekeeping going on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know this is a topic that you were just maybe proposing for coming up, which is, when bands we love put out albums that we don't love.
Yes, I got most of mine prepped, so we are going to do that.
I don't, but I'll just say that
Teaser.
Elvis Costello and the Attractions put out a country album that is among their least loved. But he loves country.
Yeah,
He went for it.
love us some Elvis. We know he listens to the show.
Oh yeah, big yeah. Don't think we don't love you, man.
You guys familiar with Chris Stapleton?
Oh yeah, I love him.
No.
Oh yeah, I love Chris Stapleton.
If you heard him, you'd know because you hear him at my house. He's on
Okay.
a lot of comps.
Okay.
He's definitely like a blues country, and I'm talking like the sexy kind of blues kind of country. I heard that and I was shocked. I was like, oh, Chris Stapleton, what's this shit? And then I put it on. I'm like, oh, this is great. Well, anyway, he was crowned Entertainer of the Year by the Academy of Country Music Awards. So that's
Congratulations, Mr. Stapleton.
so kind of relating to Chris Stapleton. I just want to see if I can find my other subject here because this kind of ties in. Dolly Parton enlisted 42 all-star guests in the creation of her upcoming rock album, and one of them is actually Chris Stapleton. She said that he was her favorite one.
Wow.
That's I was
high
like,
praise.
and he seemed a little surprised by that. Other stars on that album are going to include Sir Paul McCartney, Elton John, Ringo Starr, and of course, like I said, Chris Stapleton. The album will include 9 originals, 21 covers, including "Let It Be" by the Beatles.
Nice.
Man, that girl, like one of the songs is out on streaming, and it's not like hard rock. It's not like like bordering on metal or anything like that, but it's interesting, and I'd highly recommend you check that out when you get a chance. It's just an interesting thing to hear. I don't know that I'm gonna buy it just because I'm like, I like Dolly, but I really like super duper old school Dolly.
Yeah. Is Miley Cyrus going to be on that album?
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, there's 42 people, so I'm sure there's a good chance of that.
She just did. I believe her and Miley just did the New Year's for one of the major networks, ABC or NBC or whatever, and they did like a couple of, like rockin' songs, and it was just like it was a little hard to watch. I had
really
to admit, yeah.
It's one of those things you got to see, but not necessarily own, and maybe it'll become one of those fabled records that are hard to find eventually when it dies terribly.
Have you guys ever heard Pat Boone's heavy metal album?
No,
Pat Boone did a heavy metal album. Yep.
I remember there was a sticker that was like Alice Cooper and Pat Boone, and it was like these two should talk.
Yeah, that's really funny.
So, I guess the Eurovision Song Contest came to an end. I know Sue likes that.
Yeah.
So congratulations to Sweden.
Yeah.
Winner Lauren is her name with the song "Tattoo." Did you listen to it?
I did, and it was actually her second win. She won years ago with a different song, of course. Not my favorite song that we saw.
I didn't hear it yet. I meant to listen to it before this episode, but I did not get to it. The Eurovision Song Contest took place in the UK on behalf of the Ukraine. Obviously, a bunch of people didn't want to travel to the Ukraine right now because of what Russia's doing.
So I would say must see acts from this year's Eurovision. Number one maybe is seeing Croatia. Which was like sort of inexplicably weird at first, because it's like all these guys basically in drag, like military drag, and the song is in another language, so it's in Croatian. So like I didn't know the words, but apparently this is a giant piss take on Putin, and apparently a number of the acts and songs this year were them just like sticking it to Putin and Russia.
Yeah, I know they were really anti, I don't know what we call it, LGBTQX.
Yeah.
They're not very supportive of that world. I wish I could say our country was so much better about that, but it wasn't that long ago that Tennessee made it illegal to dress in drag.
That's true.
We're kind of...
Going backwards, actually.
A little bit.
Going backwards.
And
let's not be like Russia, guys.
Funny enough, I remember when I was in Nashville, there were drag bars. So I don't know how that worked out. Maybe, something for people to look into on their own. So we got another important death to talk about. MTV News is shutting their doors, known primarily by Gen Xers and older millennials, popularized by chronicling the news and politics primarily from the late 80s and 90s. The closing comes part of a larger series of layoffs. Showtime, Paramount, and MTV ended up laying off 25% of their domestic workforce.
Wow.
I loved Kurt Loder back in the day.
Kurt Loder was the...
Yeah, he was the man. He was so serious. Like I trusted him as a child.
And I'm a firm believer that when MTV stopped being a music channel, that was when society started to go wrong.
Dude, who even knew MTV News was still happening, though? Right?
I think it was probably on the Paramount app. I don't know that for a fact.
I mean...
Well, wasn't... Because then MTV, it split into like multiple channels. And there were a couple of them that were still music channels. It just wasn't like the
Yeah,
original
like
MTV.
Matt Pinfield was on one of them. I remember that.
And I've never paid for cable, but I haven't had cable that's had like MTV available on it ever, really. Other than like friends' houses and stuff, but like just nobody that I know even really watches it anymore because it's turned into Jersey Shore.
Yeah, it's just all that kind of
Jersey
stuff.
Shore
drama stuff.
Yeah, and 16 and pregnant stuff.
It was like it began with the Real World.
Yeah.
Like they did that, and then that just
Road
MTV,
Rules.
Yeah.
And then they had weird cartoons on at night and stuff like that.
The cartoons were awesome.
Eon Flux.
Totally.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Is that where Ren and Stimpy started?
That's my recollection.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
That I can't speak to. I really don't.
Yeah, I think it was there and then moved to Nickelodeon, maybe.
Yeah, because I think that was before Nickelodeon even existed.
No, Nickelodeon's been around since I was a little kid.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then they had Nick at Night, but we're getting way off.
Oh, yeah.
Man, I love watching those old shows.
Oh, man.
So, but we're going to get way off subject if we go down that line.
Who was?
Nearly 9 years after his death, legendary blues guitarist Johnny Winter, his music is being fought over for control of it. The battle is against his former bandmate and personal manager, Paul Nelson, and the family of his late wife, Susan, who also died in 2019. The lawsuit centers around Winter's in-laws accusing Nelson and Nelson's wife of improperly taking $1.5 million from Winter's music business. This includes auctioning off some of the late musician's guitars. Nelson and his wife have countersued Susan's family, stating that Winter's sister swooped in when he was dying of cancer, tricked him into giving up control of his music and taking away the rights as a beneficiary to Susan's estate. So,
money just brings people closer together, I've noticed.
Oh, hands down. I mean, I've never seen money ruin a relationship of any kind.
No. It's like the glue.
But if I win the lottery, I want you guys to know I will definitely never talk to you again. Just kidding.
Because I will try and cheat you out of that money on your deathbed.
Right. Well,
let's go buy this motherfucker some lottery tickets.
Right, yeah.
we'll have a huge lawsuit about control of this podcast.
Right, yeah.
All right. So, Steve, sounds like your daughter. So, the other day when we were all hanging out at Steve's house, Sydney came over back to Steve's house and was like, hey, I got all these anti-static sleeves. I'm going to go switch out all my records. And, clearly, as I knew, and I'm sure Steve knew, super jazzed about music and talking to us about her collection and things she's into and just, talking a mile a minute. So, I heard she's gotten a table and such.
Yeah, she came to me one day and was like, "Hey, is this a good deal?" And it was just like I think it was up maybe off of BestBuy.com. It's just one of those like bookshelf stereos that had a little, record player on top, and it's like $100. I'm like, I guess that's a good deal, but it's a piece of crap that's gonna sound horrible. And like, why? I said, why don't we just put you together a stereo system? Like, I got an extra amp laying around, and like, we'll find you some speakers and stuff on Marketplace, and
you can find speakers all day,
goodness.
every
There's
day.
Just stuff. I mean, some people are just giving stuff away. Some like we end up finding some like they're either like 30 or 50 watt Kenwoods off of a Kenwood, like a decent style, one of those little bookshelf stereos, but decent speakers. I hooked them up. I'm like, wow, these sound great. I mean, they don't get super loud, but you don't typically need stuff super loud, especially when you're living with your mommy,
Yeah.
But I got those for $10, basically brand new. Like I said, I had a couple of different amps laying around, and then I found her a nice Sony 5-disc CD player. Actually matches the one I have on my system. That's the exact same deal. So got her that. That was like $40, and then she ended up finding an Audio-Technica LP 120, the USB one, exact same turntable that I run. And she ended up finding it like 3 years old, barely had been used, $75. I'm like, she called me. It was like at the neighbor of her grandma must have been, I don't know if he was having a garage sale or what, but she called. She's like, yeah, should I get this? Is that a good deal? I'm like, yes. Like,
yeah.
Does it look like it's been dropped or anything? Like, I'm like, why is he only selling it for $75? Like, maybe.
Probably didn't know what it was worth.
Yeah, and she's like, oh, I turned it on and everything works and whatnot, but he didn't have it hooked up to anything. But so they just plugged it, and I was like, well, as long as he's going to basically guarantee that it works, go for it. Like there's no reason. I mean, he should be selling that thing for at least $200 in my mind. But so yeah, she scored it for $75, and she says, oh, it sounds like crap. I think I need a new needle, And she sent me the needle it was on, and I forget exactly what one. It was a Shure brand. Needle, and she like sends me the like a little screenshot of which one it was and how much it would be. It's like a $550 needle. I'm like, holy crap!
Really?
And I'm thinking, oh, it's a shame that it's wore out. But then and literally 2 days after this, the needle on my record player goes bad, and so I'm like, oh, okay, I got to get a new needle. So I started going down the rabbit hole of looking for a new cartridge for my record player and this, that, and the other, and looking for something for her, and kind of making, because there's so many options out there.
Oh yeah, you can go as cheap as you want, or you can go as expensive as you want and probably spend more money than probably all of our cars.
Yeah, I mean the for Audio-Technica, for their brand name replacement cartridges, I believe the range is somewhere between $26 and upwards to $2,000, and it's like, what are the benefits of all of these things, and where's my price point?
Yeah.
and stuff. It's
we always try to be a little educational about that kind of stuff. So we are going to continue with this story, but let's take a minute and kind of talk about record styluses, because we always want to be accessible to new people. And honestly, going into this part of this conversation, I really didn't know a lot about styluses. So this is kind of one of those things where I'm like, okay, diamond tip's better than not diamond tip. And, if this one's more expensive, it's obviously better. That's basically where I was when I got to a point.
Yeah.
So there was this so much stuff that I didn't know. Then random times I learned, there's ones that are made out of ceramics and stuff like weird stuff. So what I found out was there are two main types, and I may be pronouncing this wrong, but is it conical?
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So these have rounded edges covering a larger surface area on a record. So this is kind of one of those things where less is more. So if it's bigger and wider, that's generally not a good thing.
The needle itself, you mean?
Yeah, the actual needle or the stylus in this point.
Yeah.
These are usually found on entry-level tables. So think your Crosleys and your Victrolas. Some of these are going to be those ceramic ones where I was talking. Anytime you find a suitcase one, unless it's a super duper old one, it's probably going to have this type of cheaper stylus unless someone replaced it. And they do make diamond tip ones that you can put on those Crosleys if that's all you are able to afford, system setup wise. A lot of these cheaper ones are going to have the built-in amplification. So a conical stylus doesn't necessarily mean it's going to have a bad sound. Actually, a lot of the Audio-Technica ones that Steve is talking about, they have proprietarily these type of cartridges, and they still sound really awesome. They still make a lot of lists as far as best of. So that's definitely something to think about, if you're on a budget when you're making your setup. So then the other kind that I found is the go ahead.
Can I interrupt? Because I'm just imagining.
Absolutely.
Is it just that the wider needle, is it just gonna dig into the grooves in your records more and cause
if you've ever
wear and tear?
From what I've gathered is if you've ever looked at the microscopic level of a record, sometimes there's really even further deep ridges, and these wider styluses cannot hit those deeper spots, so there's a range of the sound that you're missing.
Okay, that makes
so that's why you want a finer tipped one.
Okay. Yeah, they even make special styluses for 78 RPM records that are just they're designed to play. I believe they're a wider groove, so they're a wider stylus, but they're also made to, because all those old 78s are all on shellac, and they're literally designed to resonate and play better with that shellac material,
which is essentially, for those who you don't know, it's like a paint basically.
Yeah.
So And then the other kind, and I want to stress, like, this conversation, part of the conversation is really meant to be like an entry level point. You can go far more in depth with like a lot of subcategories and a lot of like specialty areas. This is just the bare minimum. So then we got the elliptical styluses. These are generally ones with a smaller surface area, less of a point. So less is hitting the record when the record is spinning. The smaller area allows for the stylus to pick up much more precise range of frequencies. So like those deeper areas that we were talking about a minute ago, this will allow for a more accurate representation of the recording, because if you think about it, the main goal is to try to make your record sound as much like the actual artist is performing in front of you as possible. So if you consider yourself an audiophile, precision is better. Like, you want things to be precise. Precision equals quality.
Mm-hmm.
So then we kind of can get down into the cartridge. So Steve and I were just talking about this before we came over here. Like, a lot of people will take like the needle and the part that the needle is attached to and just call that the cartridge. And then people will call that whole setup the stylus. Best to my understanding, the needle by itself is the stylus, and the part that it connects to is technically the cartridge. Okay.
That's what I thought too.
Right. And I didn't really know that beyond a shadow of a doubt. And there's definitely a lot of people who invert the topics. And
I think a lot of people just call the whole, like, it's just the cartridge because they usually come together,
right,
and you just snap the cartridge in.
Which,
or whatever. Like,
my understanding is that you don't always have to replace the cartridge. You know, like, you can usually just buy the needles by themselves.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
So the cartridge is usually you won't be purchasing the stylus on its own. You're usually going to get it. It's usually equipped together. And what I didn't even have any concept is that there's a lot of different parts inside the cartridge that actually really affect things also. Overall, it's in a lot of ways probably more important than the stylus itself. So one of them you have is, of the four main parts, is the cantilever. This is what holds the stylus in place and sends the vibrations the stylus picks up to the magnet coil, and this allows for the transfer of frequencies to be turned into electrical current, which is later amplified out your speakers. There's different types of suspensions. The cantilever is held in place by something that's usually flexible. A lot of times this is going to be like rubber. And then there's the magnet. The magnet is what picks up the vibrations that are carried down the cantilever and sends them to the coil. The coil is what turns the vibrations into electrical current and sends it down your tone arm to your preamp. Now, maybe some of you don't care about that stuff, but some of you are super technical people, and we want to cater to you as well. So that's what I got as far as equipment went. So, and I think a lot of times you can get super in depth like that if you want. If you just want to listen to the music, that's cool too.
Well, did you learn anything about, like, you know, do people, I mean, I'm sure they do they fight over like what type of magnet is used in the cartridge, you know, as being one superior to another? Or
I know there's like floating ones and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah, like there's all kinds of different ones, and then there's like styluses that are just diamond tipped, and then there's ones where the whole stylus is diamond.
Oh.
Like, there's crazy, oddly specific like things you can get down to. So Steve, going back to Sydney, like, so she got that table in, and was it perfect working order right out the gate?
No, yeah, like I said, she had called and said, yeah, it's scratchy. This is that, the other. I think I need a new head or a new needle. And I was like, well, I'll stop by and check it out. And so I ended up ordering just basically the $50 Audio-Technica. You know, it's kind of just a stock replacement. You know, it's kind of their standard entry level needle. $50, it's good. And a lot of times too with the different ranges of needles, like I'm sure you found too, is like they have like hour ratings, and like these $50 Audio-Technicas, they're basically like good for 300 hours. And then when you get into some of the, you know, the $1,000 needles, they're good for like 3,000 hours of play, just to kind of give you the range.
In my order from Blue that I got, I recently looked that very specific number up. It's like 1,000 hours for that, which I'm like, well,
And you said that's like a $200 and some needle
around there.
Yeah,
depending on where you buy it from, between like 200 and 260. So.
And so I grabbed this I get this new needle in. I just went right, because I was like, I found them, on different websites, and they're everywhere you go, they're $49, maybe $47 on Amazon from a certain seller, but
which is good when you're trying to get started.
It's like $8 shipping, like I'm like, well, so I just got it right from Audio Technica for free shipping over basically the next day shipping. So I get it, put it on, I'm like, whoa, new needle, and I'm like, oh, it sounds like crap, and I'm like. And I like literally tried to get a hold of customer service with Audio Technica and call too late in the day. I believe they're like out of Columbus, Ohio. And so I was like, I kind of remember the last time I did a needle change. It was about 1.5 years ago or so. And I was like, like I kind of remember this like having to be broke in. And so I did a little Google search. Do you need to break in your new record stylus?
And that is my understanding that you do usually. Like
all this information came up, and I was like, oh, that's right. And like standard, it seems like is like 10 to 20 hours for a lot of these like kind of like lower level styluses. Some of them, there's one little blog I got into, and one guy was like, yeah, I ordered this needle. It wasn't an Audio Technica. It was some fancy schmancy like $500 to $700 needle. It was pretty big deal. And he was like, man, you would think after 30 hours it would be good. And he said but for him it was like 70 hours he hit the mark. And he said it wasn't even like a gradual like, oh, it's getting better. It was just all of a sudden, boom, like right around that 70-hour mark, it just sounded perfect. And he was kind of like, that seemed weird. And so I'm doing this that and the other with the needle, trying to with research, trying to figure out like, well, how much time do I have to spend on this, blah blah blah. I ended up stopping over at
question. When you were doing this research, did you find out, do they recommend like you playing a crappy record that you don't care about? Like if these records or these styluses aren't broken, does it pose a damage to your record?
I didn't find anything on that. And talking to another friend he's got some experience with a lot of different cartridges. He's got cartridges that are $20, and he's got his fanciest cartridge is well over $2,000, and he's got some high dollar like $1,200, $1,500 tables. Like he's pretty far.
He's living the life.
Well, he just can't say no to thing. He also owns like 4,000 guns because he's just like
because you're not getting his records.
Because you're not getting his records.
Is he single?
No, he's married.
Oh wow!
I mean, it's his second wife. But
was it a shotgun wedding?
It probably was. But I had asked him about that specifically, and he said, "Oh no, he's like, I can guarantee you that like it's not going to wreck the record. It's
okay,
And what I had heard about or on certain information I found about it, it wasn't even that like it was like the tip needed to be worn in. It was just like basically like the spring or the pivot, I believe they called it, where the opposite end of the needle that is touching the record, that where it's connected to all the other parts and pieces, that's
part
just
of
stiff.
The suspension,
and that, yeah, it's kind of like the suspension, I guess. Yeah, and like that is just stiff from the factory, so that is what needs to get worn because it's not following the grooves; it's going up and down.
I think that's the part where like the magnets can come in because I think some of those styluses are floating in that area.
Yep.
And then they probably don't need as much time to break in, whereas some actually are mounted in place and physically attached.
Yeah, yeah. And so I had never really done any research on this, so it was all new to me, like literally within the last 7 days even. And so I went over, I stopped by Sid's mom's house and I was like, I just got to go check out this needle and see what I can do. And I went over and I could tell, because it's the same table, like just the height adjustments and the tone, her tone arm balance were just completely off. So I just kind of went to what I had found when I originally purchased that table, what like the recommended like factory settings basically are for it. And it's like, you turn this to 2, do this to this amount of weight and blah, blah, blah. And turn your anti-skate to 2. and you should be good, and you can kind of adjust from there.
Yeah, you can get into changing all kinds of settings, like in some tables, like the angle the needle's hitting the record on, the counterweight, which is going to affect like your tracking force, like how much pressure is applied to your needle. And one bit of advice that I have before I let Steve finish his thought is, if you are able to, you can purchase scales to check how much force is being applied to your record, because your stylus will have a suggested tracking force for it.
Yep. Yeah, like Stu, you had talked before about the too much weight or too big of a needle digging down and causing damage. That is just going to be, that's where you can adjust that tone arm weight, so you're not just putting undue pressure on it.
Yep.
You got to save your vinyl. You want like the minimum amount of pressure needed to keep the needle constantly in contact with your record, but not enough so much like a wave's going to throw it off and make it skip across your record.
Yep. So actually after the Radke show that Stu and I went to the other night, I was like, hey, come in and check out this record, because we knew we were going to be talking about this subject, and I was like, here, then you can like hear like how like messed up the sound is with this new needle. And so we go in there and messing around. I was like, oh gosh, I wonder if I adjust my tone arm. And I looked at all my adjustments, and they were off of my like standard, new out of the box setup specs basically. And I think I had just unknowingly, like as my needle had been on there, had been wearing, I think I was adjusting it for the sound quality. And that's
kind
of changed it a little bit. And so I brought it back, and it wasn't like was that far off, but I literally brought it back. Like the height adjustment was from 1 to 2, and my anti-skate was on like 8, and I brought it back down to 2. And
that's a pretty big adjustment. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So Steve and I were talking. I got a question when he's done with this thought.
Yep.
So we're doing this, and because we were listening to it, and it was basically the left channel, I believe, was just popping out. The right channel sounded fine, and I was like, oh, I wonder if I just adjust this thing. Adjusted it, boom, perfect sounding. No wear and time. It had a half hour of play on it. So
that alignment can be a big deal.
Oh, it's huge. So I wonder if that's more of the because I couldn't find anything on Audio-Technica's website about wear in time. Like there was nothing on there.
Well, here's the other thing. I mean, you solved the channel cutting in and out, but it could be that after 50 hours, it's going to sound even better.
Could be. Yeah. Could be.
Yeah.
Do you know what the anti-skate's for?
It's to keep your needle from like drifting across the record.
Okay.
That's my.
I just looked it up, and it says it applies a small outward force to the tone arm, counteracting the tendency of the arm to move inward or skate toward the center of the record as the tone arm approaches the end of the record.
Yeah.
So I had no idea what that was when Steve and I were talking about that earlier.
Okay.
So
there's lots to learn about this stuff. I mean, honestly, like, I read all about that when I was setting up my record player for the first time, when I got the last time I got a new needle, and I was like, oh, okay, this all makes sense. I did it. But if you asked me to do it right now, I'd be like, and I have to go back and be like, what are the suggested, like, the method, do this first, adjust this first, second, like, I don't remember.
Yeah, so. That's kind of what I had just like had to do. I was like, oh gosh, just like, I hadn't even thought about it. And even like, cause I was like, how did this stuff get readjusted? I'm like, oh, I guess just inherently, I'm like, oh, it's doing this, so I'm going to readjust stuff. Oh, there, it sounds good. And now I'll leave it for another 6 months and whatnot.
Well, it
so,
might be something worth talking about in an upcoming episode.
I think so, because I think a lot of the people are diehard about it. There are some people that certainly are like, whatever, it's just playing a record. Yeah. So I did take one of my friends to the record store, because his parents had like one of those, essentially like some sort of variation of a Victrola, like one of those console things. And of course I did tell him, I'm like, first thing you do is you need to get a new stylus for that thing. I was like, that's huge. And I brought him in there, and it was just interesting. And I was like introducing him to the employees at the Eroding Winds and things like that. And I was like, he was too scared to come here by himself.
Yeah.
Just call a brother out.
Right in front of everybody.
That's why he's the villain.
Yeah, right.
That's why I'm the villain. And it was funny because this was like not too long after Record Store Day, and he came in and it's been a while since I went to a store and someone dropped way more money than me. and he's like, about $200 and some. He's like, and he's already like, oh, I got to buy this and that. And then a couple days later, he's talking to him, and he's getting the urge to buy more. And I'm like, I just gave him the sickness.
Yeah.
You're evil, man.
It is evil. Yeah. I was like, at least you're never going to do drugs because you're not going to have any money for drugs.
Right.
There's worse hobbies to get into. And it's always, like we always said, be inclusive. If someone's got questions, teach them, help them, let them make their own decisions. Though
sharing needles is way safer in a vinyl environment than some of your other choices.
That's true. Just be careful of the ones you find on the ground, though.
That's right. Yeah.
They might damage your records. All right, kids. Well, I think that's probably going to be the show for the day. So we just want to thank all of you for listening and supporting us over these last couple of years and sticking with us with the change in format, which, albeit, I think is a wonderful change in format, having Stu and Steve on the show.
God, I have to agree.
I'm on the fence.
So just remember, we are available on Apple Music, Spotify, Audible, all the usual friends. If you YouTube, yeah, YouTube, we're on there. Tell your mom loves YouTube. So just remember too, like, if you get a chance, head on over to our Facebook page. Both Steve and I have access to the Facebook account, so if you message us or click on the link that sends us an email to onemorerecordpodcast@gmail.com, we're probably going to respond to you. So if you like what we're doing, make sure you let us know that. And if you hate it, just keep that to yourself. If you get the option to like hop on like Apple Music and you want to leave us a review, that would be great, because those sites like Apple and Spotify and whoever you can rate us on, like, if you give us a good review, then more people are likely to find us. And we like doing this, so we want to keep doing this. So Steve, where else can they find us?
You can find us over on the old Instagram, the Instas, as the little kiddies are calling it these days.
Where you can talk about vinyls.
Yeah, vinyls and records and vinyl records.
Yep.
Either or.
Discs.
Yeah.
Spin some discs.
Yeah, there's no DJ scratching there, though.
Waka waka.
Yeah.
Wait, no, that's
Fozzie Bear.
That's Fozzie Bear, yeah.
Did you? Oh, Chris, we're gonna get off subject here again. Did you see the Muppets?
They got an album.
They got a new album coming out. So
Dr. T.
maybe we're gonna have to do a review of that.
Oh hell yeah, dude!
It's on.
I will be.
It's on vinyl.
I will be buying that.
So, all right. So this is gonna be it, guys. We're signing off. Just remember, there's always more vinyl.